folks, it's Matt here from Polar Designs, and we're here with another really exciting video. I'm really excited to talk to you guys about this today. Today we are going to discuss my 6-in-1, all-in-one hydroponics desktop system. Now this system is almost fully 3D printed, so we'll discuss a little bit about where I got the inspiration for this idea, how I went about creating this idea, and then the finished product. So let me begin first, before I explain the whole process of this project, by explaining where I drew some of my inspirations from. So I've always been really passionate about hydroponics, or at least within recent years about hydroponics, and sustainable farming in general, and really how we can push it to more homes around the world. And I think this system, and I think AeroGarden and Miracle-Gro in particular, did an excellent job doing this. They thought small, they thought simple, they thought we can get more people to do this if we make it something manageable and something attractive. So within this system, you can see that it is fairly simple. They do a great job with their deep water culture / drip hydroponics method. It's all integrated very well with timers located for the lights, with nutrient reminders, with specific types of plants and all that. And all that is good and well, but this really only represents kind of one type of hydroponics. And as you get more into hydroponics, you realize that it differs depending on what you're growing, and the different type of hydroponic differs on what you're growing. And as a teacher, I wanted to explore this further. So I started first with my AeroGarden by creating some 3D printed upgrades, right? They have these little pre-bought seedling packs for these, and I used one and it got destroyed, and I didn't want to purchase more as they were quite expensive. So I chose the 3D print ones that can be reusable, and this was the very first edition that I added, and it was great, right? It was wonderful. And eventually I added these nice little caps, and these caps do a great job capping off any areas that you are not growing in. So that was all good and well, but I wanted to take it a step further, and that's kind of where this project comes into play. So what I think we're gonna do is I'm gonna hop on over to the computer, and I'm gonna show you a few of my 3D models and for this process, and then eventually we'll be back here. All right, so we're here in Inventor, and you can see all the different files that I have open, all the different models that I created. Let's start with the basin. I've tried to match the colors to all these models, so you'll see that in some upcoming ones. When we're looking at this basin, we can see some detail, like the hole that I have created for the inlets of the power, and the spot that holds the submersible pump in place. So this one wasn't too difficult. It was a fairly basic design. The biggest issue, I think, probably with this was the printing aspect, printing it super thick. So you can see I'm struggling here to dimension it. Ultimately, I think it's like 5.2 to 5.25 inches in height. Let's see, 5.22 or 5.52. Yeah, so it's over 5.5 inches in its overall height. So it has plenty of depth for deep water culture applications. You can see the light hanger here. This is the bottom portion. This one was a doozy, folks. I went through like 10 iterations on this. There were so many iterations to so many of these parts that I ended up with quite a bit of scrap throughout this project. Quite a bit of scrap was made. But ultimately landed on this design here, and I think it ended up looking pretty good. We'll take a look at the next piece, which is the top portion to the light hanger top part, and this is what actually holds the LED light that I purchased on top. Now, it took a little bit of design on this one as well. I ended up making the exchange piece between the two a lot longer, but I like the design. The next one we're going to take a look at is the wick hydroponic top portion. This is the one that uses the paracord in those holes that you can see in order to suck the water or wick it up. This was a fairly simple design. It was based off of one of my other ones. Now this is the nutrient film technique, now is used in conjunction with the flood and drain, which I just showed on there. And this nutrient film technique was again a fairly easy one to model, as it just sat on top of one of the more complicated ones. The next one is our flood and drain. This is actually what the NFT, or nutrient film technique, sits on top of. You can see the inlet there and the outlet, and I will show you the piece that goes with as well. That's that right there. It's the shower head type thing that goes from the submersible pump up top. This is the deep water culture. It is one of the simplest tops that I had, as there were no, weird moving parts that needed to be attached to it. Nice and pretty pink. The next one is one of my more complicated tops, and that's the drip hydroponics. This one has a slot in it for the drip connector that I will show you shortly, and also has an additional connector to the submersible pump. So this is the part that kind of slides in to that slot on the top portion. That took a little bit to design, and this is the part that sits on the submersible pump there that pumps the water up. And once again, here's the top. This one's one of my favorites, I have to say. However, there is one more cool one, and that's the aeroponics one. This one shoots the stream of oxygenated water up at the plant, and this aeroponics one's pretty cool. It has a little extra shield to stop the water, but the main part to it is this right here, and that's our sprayer nozzle that goes with the aeroponics top, and it sits on top of, once again, that submersible pump, which pushes that water out and kind of sprays, as I've mentioned. I did add a few more holes in this once I was finished, but you can see these are all of our models. Let's get back to the video. So now that we're back, let's go ahead and start by doing a quick print analysis. How much time did it take to print all of this? And I'll explain, each piece individually. Altogether, the print time for all of this was about 190 hours. So quite a few days.
Several days later.
Into just the printing aspects in this alone. Not only that, 190 hours of printing, but materials-wise, between all of the extras that had to be purchased, as well as the plastic itself, we were at about $116 or so.
I am never gonna financially recover from this.
Give or take a few bucks. So not necessarily the cheapest system in order to create, but a wonderful proof of concept nonetheless. Now that we have the breakdown of how long it took to print what and what it costs in order to print each individual portion, I will put that up on the screen so that you can get a better view of it. All right, let's talk about the setup of each one of these individual systems and how they work. So we're starting with our reservoir, as was pre-mentioned, and we're going to start by filling it up with some water. Now, I definitely need to replace the water in this, so I'll get to that after this video. The very first thing we're going to do is we are going to enter in our water pump. So you see we have a submersible pump in there. How I ended up getting it in was through this little access point that I've added into the print, and you can see that I can feed the extension cord, or the cord for it, directly right through there, and that will allow us to have this nice little pump. Now there is a nice little spot for it to rest in there, and it has a few suction cups on the bottom in order to keep it in place. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and add in our air pump. It should be mentioned that our air pump is technically optional. However, for our deep water culture system, it thrives on oxygen. And since plants thrive on this oxygen, we better give it to them, right? So we're going to take our air pump with our tube and our oxygen stone. And we're going to slide it right through there. And it will come out. Will come out the bottom there, and we'll be able to have some fresh oxygen also coming to our plant through our water, which is wonderful. Awesome, so we have this set up now. Let's go ahead and get our light sorted. All right, so as I previously mentioned, this light is in two pieces. We have our bottom portion and we have our top portion. I will say these took quite some time in order to figure out the best possible way to create this light holder. However, I'm really happy with the results. So all you need to do in order to set up this light, it's really simple. You lift up the base and you set it right in there. Now, since this is a two-piece, all you need to do now, drop that piece in, and the way that this is designed, it prevents it from pushing forward too much, which should hold our light nicely in place. So now that we have this light set up, the only other thing to do is plug it in. Right, so now that we're done with setup, let's go ahead and view our different hydroponic tops or lids. So the way it works is each one of these lids is interchangeable within this reservoir, and each one of them represents a different type of hydroponics. So let's take a look here, and let's start simple, right? Let's start pretty simple here. So let's start with our deep water culture. Now I don't know if you can see this, but each one of these are labeled with the specific type of hydroponics on it. So all you gotta do is pop your lid on for deep water culture. The next step for deep water culture is plugging in your air stone. And once you have your air stone plugged in, you will be providing fresh oxygen to your plants. The only other step for this is dropping your plant in and watching it grow. So deep water culture is great for certain types of plants, but it's not perfect for all types of plants and all types of growing, which is why we have a wide variety of different other options. Let's go ahead and explore our next. The next type of hydroponics that we're going to touch upon is drip hydroponics. Basically, within this drip hydroponics, they are the water is slowly trickling up against whatever plant that you are growing. And how I chose to do this was pretty interesting. We have our submersible pump, and in order to pump the water from the pump to the plant, I chose to create this part right here. So it's a tube with two 3D printed parts. On one side is the part that attaches to our submersible pump, just like that. Just goes right on there, just like a cat. Now, this other part is, I believe, one of the only parts that I ended up printing in ABS. And the reason being is it needed to be a little bit strong. So the way that this elbow joint works is on our lid, all you need to do is take it and slide it in. And it holds it perfectly in place in order to provide water to your plant. Let me get this set up and I will get you a better view of it. All right, so we have the drip. Have the drip set up, and you can see that we are flowing water. And if I take the top off here, you might be able to peek inside of it and get a better view of the water pump. Taking the water from down below in the reservoir up to, ultimately, your plant. And now this runs on a timer, so it doesn't get a constant water flow. That's the whole point of drip hydroponics, is to reduce the amount of water that you're using. Let's take a look at another water saver hydroponics. The next type of hydroponics that we're gonna discuss is aeroponics. So aeroponics uses more air than it does water in order to grow your plant. So how I chose to do this is this lid has a little shield barrier because it does get a little bit wet. And how I chose to do this was create this for the submersible pump. And how it works is there's a bunch of holes that are actually just drilled, I believe actually just burned into the top here. And this sits directly on top of your submersible pump. Now I also included this in the lid for storage. It'll kind of keep it right in place. So let me go ahead and get this set up and let's get a better view of aeroponics. So I always have to be very careful with my aeroponics because it can get a little bit messy. Now I have the pump turned down, so I should be able to take my lid off, and you can see kind of how the system works. So if I take the top and I put it back on, and I place my plant directly in here, it's going to slowly kind of provide the water, that this plant needs. It's not going to drown it. It'll just slowly kind of fountain the water onto it. So that is our aeroponics unit. Let's go ahead and get ourselves set up for another one. The next system that we're going to talk about is the flood and drain system. So for our flood and drain system, this one took quite a bit of plastic, and it has to be pretty solid, because the way flood and drain works is obviously the top part floods and then it eventually drains off. So this is my flood hole and this is my drain hole. And this is the part that bridges the gap between the submersible pump and the drain portion. So how it works is this slides right in here, and then you can click it into place. And now that it's clicked into place, you can go ahead and place this into the submersible pump. So the flood and drain system's all set up. I will say this is by far one of my favorite ones. I just love the way it looks. It's slowly bringing the water in and slowly taking the water out, which is just really cool to me. And not only that, but I am going to use this system in order to help with our next system. So let me get set up and I'll show you. All right, so the next system that we're going to talk about is the nutrient film technique. This one's a little harder to read in the blue. How it works, it's pretty interesting. Basically, the only difference between this flood and drain and this nutrient film technique is the fact that within nutrient film technique, our plants are suspended and within that moving water and that water flow. So in order to do that, cover it up, toss your plant in. Now it's suspended, and you are now doing nutrient film technique, not flood and drain. Wonderful, wonderful. So we have one more. We've covered 5. We've covered the deep water culture, the drip, the aeroponics, the nutrient film technique, and the flood and drain. We have one more. The last one is our only passive system, meaning it does not need an air pump or a submersible water pump in order to run, and this is wick hydroponics. So let me get set up and we'll talk about wick hydroponics. As I mentioned, the last one that we're going to discuss here is wick hydroponics, and it is our only passive system. The way that this works is I created this base similar to the flood and drain base over there without the holes on either side, and all I did was put a couple holes in it for this paracord. Now this paracord is going to sit in the water and slowly wick up the water from the reservoir up into this section here, which ultimately gets filled with these clay pebbles. Now I'm not going to do it for this demonstration, but let me go ahead and get the top on here. Once again, this wick system is our only passive system. So how it works, once again, you have the water wicking up from the wicks, from the paracord, which is entering into this porous rock, and the porous rock ultimately will feed your plant. So let me get this all set up, and we'll get the drip system set up, and I'll show you what it looks like all together. There you have it, folks. This has been quite the passion project for me. My wife can tell you that I became submersed in this like crazy, and I will say that I just had a blast, creating all of this. I learned a lot not only about hydroponics, but about 3D modeling and 3D printing in general. The big takeaway is, just because you don't know enough about something doesn't mean that you can't learn it. So I did not know how I was going to do this. I just kind of had a vision and an idea, and here we are. It's a reality. So I'm really happy how this 6-in-1 hydroponics unit, fully 3D printed, has turned out. With a little bit of help from some outside energy, you too can create your own sustainable farming hydroponic setup. Now, I'd like to thank everyone for taking the time and watching this video. Hopefully you found it interesting, hopefully you found it educational, and you can apply some of this into your own daily life. Thanks again. As always, folks, stay creative.